Okay. Go ahead. Okay, we're reconvening to the regular meeting, closed session report. Item 4A, in the matter of student SPL 2122-3, the board in closed session took action to approve a settlement agreement arising out of a dispute relating to special education for the student with a total monetary value of $9,000. The board voted to approve the settlement agreement 5-0 abstentions. For item 4B, public employment, principal personnel, approved 5-0, leave of absence plus health benefits. And item 4C, public employment, teacher personnel info received. All right, now we're going to move to item 7, the patriotic exercise. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Lily Lockyer from Hoover.
Hi, my name is Lily, and I'd like to thank Ms. Booth for asking me to represent Hoover. I've been in Hoover since 2nd grade, when my amazing teacher, Mrs. Jordan, helped me to school. I love to ski. I'm looking forward to going to our camp this summer. I also like to play basketball and write. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you like a picture up here? I'm the president. You get a picture with me.
Super exciting.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. And let's take one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Dad, if you want to come up, you can take one up closer if you would like to.
All right.
Trustees, just a gentle reminder, you actually do need to have microphones near your face when you speak, or they won't pick up too much ambient noise.
All right, roll call. So it'll be tricky. It's a little first time. 2 new folks, so don't get it wrong. All right, Trustee DeVoy,
And present.
Trustee Brown,
Present.
Trustee Kendall, present. Trustee present. Trustee Wong here. All right, item 9, approval of the agenda. Our motion to approve today's agenda. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 10, approval of minutes from February 15, 2022. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes from February 15, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstains.
Abstained.
Thank you. All right. All right. Item 11, public statements related to agenda items. At the discretion of the Board of Trustees, the public may address the board on non-agenda items and/or agenda items. If you choose to make a public statement, you must be present at the meeting and complete the blue request to address the Board of Trustees form and provide to the superintendent's assistant. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending upon the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. If your comment is on an item that is not on the agenda, then you will be asked to speak during these public statements related to non-agenda topics at the end of the meeting. If your comment is on an item that is on the agenda, then you will be called on to speak at the time of the agenda item. Right, item 12, union statement. Do we have someone from Burlingame Education Association here to make a statement?
me.
Vote.
Aye. You can hear me? Yes, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, giving me the opportunity tonight to talk a bit about what's going on at Roosevelt. My name is Tim Weaver. Yes, I did pull the shortest straw for Roosevelt staff meeting class. No, actually, I'm happy to be here tonight to report to the community about what's going on at Roosevelt. This is my 19th year teaching at Roosevelt. Taught second, third, fourth, and it's my first year teaching fifth grade. I'm also a parent in the district, as I had 2 sixth graders who are at the AS. Thanks to the AS people. On to Roosevelt. The school's super excited to be getting back to some sense of normalcy after 2 years of craziness. Many students and staff are excited to finally take the masks off outside and are looking forward to less restrictions soon. What's crazy is that I've had many of my students for almost 2 years now. For the first time I'm seeing some of them in person without a mask, which is just, it's crazy and nuts, but it's wonderful at the same time. We've been busy here at Roosevelt. First and foremost, we're just recovering from daylight savings time. That was brutal. That's horrible. We've recently had a successful kindness challenge week, where extra attention was given to simple acts of kindness around school and at home. Last week, we had our We Are Roosevelt Week, which celebrates the school's amazing diversity. The teachers continue their PLC work in and out of the classroom. Next week, we're having our annual Science Olympiad, and we've already begun preparing for our Creative Con in May. So we've been very busy. And now just a little bit from each of the individual grades. TK, I'll start with TK. Other than being super cute as they walk around the campus, they're soon going to start learning all about plants, how plants grow, through their own mini egg carton garden. Super exciting. Kindergarten is currently working on weather and doing some fun experiments with temperature and thermometers. First graders have really dug into FAPA as a way to engage comprehension of literature. They've been making cardboard creations, origami, and modeling with clay to depict retellings of stories in class. Second grade has been working on 2 project-based learning activities. The first is a collaborative math activity called Shape City, where the students create a city of polygons along with a map and guide for the city, as well as biographies of significant individuals of their choice. Third grade's working on sewing units and are starting their unit on the Ohlone. They're looking forward to their 2-week boat making on-site field trip in April. Fourth grade, both classes just finished their City X Invention projects and are currently studying volcanoes, the rock cycle, and California missions. Fifth graders are excited and nervous. Actually, they aren't really sure how to feel about having puberty yet in a few weeks. They're about to begin their Petty Talks project, which this year will focus on service and helping others. And they have lots of questions about 6th grade at the AS. They're, again, excited, nervous, full scared, but lots of questions. And last for Mrs. Prater, the TK through 2nd grade students have been busily preparing for their first spring music showcase, which has been their first opportunity, performance opportunity since 2019. Loads more to report, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to report about what's happening.
All right. Item 13, statement of principle. I'm back.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak tonight on behalf of the principals. I'm Lisa Booth, the principal at Hoover. And I just want to welcome our new board members. We look forward to working with you and our board members who keep coming back. Thank you for supporting us. This week marks the end of our 2nd trimester. Our report cards go out on Friday. So it's amazing to think that we're already 2/3 of our way through the year. Looking back, when I'm on the yard now doing yard duty and having conversations with parents, it seems like there's a different tone in the air with the new news about after spring break. We seem to see a lot more maybe hope and kind of, I had some words written down, lightness, a lot of reflection about the last 2 years. I think when there's a little bit of light at the end for all of us, it changes the conversation. Something we've also been thinking a lot about is that our kindergarten and first grade families, the parents have never even been in their buildings. I mean, they've never even walked in, and it's a testament to the trust that parents put in all of us to just drop their little 5-year-olds off on the curb. They walk into this experience that's their very own. They've never seen it. They don't know where they sit. They don't know where their book is. They don't know what. A parent asked me where the library was the other day. She had no idea where to even picture it in the building. So we're looking forward to inviting those parents in for the very first time, and their children are going to get to show them the school that they've been at. They're so proud of. So that's really exciting. We're also looking forward to community events. I think that's the one thing everyone's missed more than anything. People say, all I heard about was this great community, but I haven't seen it yet. So it's really, you know, certainly in the physical self, seen it. They want to be there, and we're looking forward to that. All of us principals are meeting with our PTAs and trying to, you know, schedule our calendars out without being too pushy, but I'm really trying to give people a lot of opportunities to get together between now and the end of the year. And then we're also, as principals, planning some more standard events like open house, what we're going to do for that. We're going to do for our promotion ceremony. We're going to do for the 3-5 music concert, trying to be still conscious of being safe, but also trying to provide opportunities for families on site. So we're excited about all of that. And then, let's see, what else did I say? You know, for principals, it's an interesting time of year because it feels like we're ending the year, but for all of us, we're really beginning a new year too. We're enrolling new students. We're thinking about staffing. We're thinking about next year and how many classes we're going to have and where they're going to be. So it's kind of the beginning and the end for us. So it's kind of a challenging time, but it's exciting. And we welcome all of you now that campus is open. Certainly come on down and visit. We will absolutely make time. We have the time for all of you. And we'd love to see you on campus if you want to come visit. So that's it. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Principal Booth, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was holding off doing visits to campuses just because I didn't want to intrusive, but there's an invitation.
At least in Uber, I'm sure that would say.
Trustees have actually started asking, and I've said that they can start sending out emails to schedule, because scheduling is a big deal for us, as you just heard Principal Booth say. So you can start reaching out because campuses do open up more on April 4th, which is only a couple of weeks.
Great. All right, now we'll move to item 14, statement of our superintendent.
Going to be brief this evening. Wanted to welcome back actually Principal Booth. We missed her a great deal. It's wonderful to have your presence back in district leadership as well as at Hoover. I know that Hoover was really eager to have you back. On the a little bit of a sadder side, we also had the resignation of our principal at Washington due to health reasons this past week. Was very difficult. I went to the site with her and met with the staff for about an hour, and it was difficult but extremely well done, as is the hallmark of our principals. We have a great group, and she will be hopefully returning to us. She is taking a year's leave, and we really anticipate and look forward to her also getting healthier and being able to return to us at some point. And the exciting stuff is that campuses are starting to open up. So I've been getting questions about doing dances and weekend activities. And after the spring break, we are able to open up more and people are getting excited. And I think it's really important that we reconnect with them. We were also getting a lot of questions about odd topics for a superintendent to get, but they seem to get pretty active in our community, and that is outdoor ed. It is agendized for the next board agenda on April 12th for the board to discuss and provide direction. So if any of you out there are watching, are interested in outdoor ed, feel free to join us on April 12th when the board is going to take it up for discussion for the future.
All right, now we move to item 15, statement of board members. Dan, would you like to start?
Just greetings to everyone. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to being part of the community. Thank you.
Likewise, I'm excited to be joining the board. I'm very excited to work with the great teachers and parents and community members and staff. So I'm excited and happy to be here.
Elizabeth?
And I'd like to say welcome, and we're happy to see you, and good to see everybody else here as well. Thank you.
Another welcome, and just will share what I was up to this month. We had the city district liaison meeting. I attended that with Florence, and then also Dan and Doug were able to be there because they hadn't been sworn in yet. We looked at the demographic study that we'll talk about later, so I won't go into that. I also went to BSD parcel tax meeting, which was a great meeting, and we decided with all the stakeholders to continue to explore and possibly pursue the parcel tax. And what was really remarkable about it was that all of the teachers came and agreed that they wanted to be a part of this with us. BCE wanted to partake, PTA wanted to partake, so it just felt good, like everybody wanted to be a part of this and work together to pass the parcel tax. And then I also attended the PTA council meeting this morning in Kate Reed's place. We had a robust discussion about outdoor ed and
Amongst other things.
and it was the first time I've been to a PTA council meeting, so it was really
Great, thank you. So welcome, Doug and Dan. Very nice to have you here. And see, they did show up. You know, there was some speculation.
So wait,
about
who won the pool?
Yeah.
That's it.
So thank you for showing up. I wanted to say congratulations to Akira Nakamura, who is a BIS sixth grader. The San Mateo County Office of Ed has a STEM fair for 2022. He is one of their winners for a project titled Mathematically Modeling Planetary Orbits. So congratulations, Akira. Let's see, for things I've been up to, I went to that city district liaison meeting. That was actually very productive. I think it's a very fluid, active discussion about the housing that's being added to the city of Burlingame and how that's really going to affect our school district. What's our current capacity? What really is that, you know, new housing going to mean for more children, because it's usually more smaller units and, you know, it doesn't quite translate as clearly as if you build like a single family home, you know, in terms of how many children would actually be generated in that kind of housing. So it's great ongoing discussion we have with the city, and that will keep happening. I've been going to mental health collaborative meetings. That's a bit of a one-off. I'm just usually the board member doesn't go, but with my background, whatever but it's been very engaging and very interesting. And we have a really robust mental health team here. And it's amazing. So I'm just so proud of that for our district. I've been participating in our staff choir, the Notebooks. We'll be having, I think we'll be having a public concert sometime in May. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to put in a plug. The Asian Pacific Islander School Board Member Association, they're putting on a virtual panel on March 21st at 4:30. And it's really a deeper dive into the mental health issues, particular to Asian American Pacific Islander students. I would encourage anybody here to register and go. There's no cost. Oh, great. So I think it will be very interesting. You'll get more than just kind of a surface level understanding, more real stories about what's happening for AAPI students, particularly, you know, surrounding COVID and all that's happened. And my last plug is for people to go see the Burlingame High School production of Into the Woods, which still has 3 more performances, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the music director is our former music teacher, Mrs. Yamamoto. And one of the musicians?
yeah, there was someone in, I saw someone I knew there.
And in the pin orchestra, I'm playing synthesizer. So So please come to that production. You would recognize so many of your former students. They're all in it. So that's what Mr. Claro said. He recognized all their names. So it's been really fun. Very difficult musical, but they're pulling it off. So fantastic. All right. Item 16, board communication.
Yes, there's just a single item, which is the county's notice to the board, a review of the first interim report, which is timely since it was 3.5 months ago when we signed agreement in the second interim. So it's always good to hear from the county.
Yeah, okay. So item 17, the consent agenda. I don't have that long paragraph to read about the consent agenda anymore.
Do you want me to pull it up for you?
I mean, do I need to read it? No, okay. So I think, so this is an opportunity where we would approve everything that's within the consent agenda. If there's something you want to pull out, you can say that and then we can do it at the end of the agenda. Or if you just want to ask a couple of questions about something that's on the consent agenda, you can also do that without necessarily pulling it off to the end. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. This is your opportunity to ask a question about anything on the consent agenda. Any questions? Okay, if not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 18, under education, our justice, equity, inclusion, and diversity presentation on special ed.
Good evening, trustees and Burlingame community. I'm Joelle Spencer. I'm your Director of Special Education.
I'm Kathy Page, BIS teacher.
And we have the pleasure of presenting justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion and how it relates to special education tonight. So thank you for having us. We'll do it manually.
So on the next 4 slides, you're going to see a historical overview of the numbers in special education. This data is pulled every December, every year. In special education, there are 13 eligibility categories. In the next 2 slides, I'm going to review the historical disabilities and eligibility disabilities. Right, you see it. Some trends to note from this slide, that there has been a slight decrease in the number of students identified with speech and language impairment. We have implemented the universal speech screener for the past few years, which identifies students as early as kindergarten. A few years ago, the department trained on how to exit students from speech and language, because as you can see, we were over identifying students in speech. The other categories on this slide have remained relatively stable. On the next slide, you'll notice a slight increase in autism. There have been an increase in autism diagnosed for the preschool age students at this time. Next slide.
And looking at our historical students by grade, we'll dive a little bit deeper in the next 2 slides, actually. So you're seeing preschool through 3rd on this slide, and then 4th through 8th on the next slide. And I like to review how to read this because it's a little bit challenging to read. So the green trend line indicates our students that are current 8th graders. So actually in 2012, they were in preschool. Keep this to the next slide. So it's not uncommon to see the numbers change from year to year slightly, as some students may exit special education, whereas others qualify. So for example, a lot of students, when they're younger, they have a speech language impairment and they may be exited out. And a common one we see is some students are found eligible for a learning disability around 3rd grade. You'll notice that the current 4th graders, and the current 7th graders are what we consider a grade bubble. They're slightly larger from year to year as compared to other grades. So we like to monitor this for staffing purposes. And our total enrollment as of December 2021, so that's just a couple months ago, was 286. I did a different data poll just a few days ago, and we were at 292 in total across the district. So again, this is just a snapshot. A few trends we're seeing. We have seen some increases in requests for assessments, particularly from parents. We did anticipate that during the pandemic. And in general, the areas associated with these requests relate to social emotional functioning and behavior.
Joelle, can I say something about this slide? So, so if it's 292, that's still less than 10% of our total school population, which is lower than most districts. Like usually it's like 13%.
Yes, I did pull, I believe I have that here. I think in 18-19 school year, it was just above 11%. And there is an upward trend in the state of California identifying students with disabilities. So I do have to say we have some excellent pre-referral processes in place. We have response to intervention. We also have school site teams that really are proactive at identifying things early and providing intervention where needed. So whether it's mental health related or academically related.
Right, preventing an IEP.
Right. You know, it's kind of a fine balance. We have to seek out and find our students with disabilities, but also we want to give a chance for pre-referral interventions. Any other comments on that one?
In special education, we have a number of acronyms and vocabulary. For the sake of this PowerPoint tonight, I will just focus on 3. The first one is SAI. SAI is a specialized academic instruction. It is the service that is provided based on the student's IEP. This service can be offered in small group or one-to-one. And the service is provided by a special education teacher or a paraeducator under the supervision of the special education teacher. There is SDC, which is a special day class. This is a separate classroom on the public campus. It is taught by the special education teacher. The ratio for this group is very low for the teacher-student ratio. These services for this group is more of an intensive support, and because the areas of need are greater. Then you have NPS, which is a non-public school, which is often referred to as a separate school. However, the distinction between the separate school and the private school is quite different. A private school, anyone can enroll, but with an NPS, you have to go through the IEP process.
And next few slides, we have some other key vocabulary. Moving on to child find, I mentioned this earlier. Each public school system is responsible to find students ages 3 and older with disabilities in its area. So we're responsible for all of Burlingame area, even if a student is in private school. So say you live in Burlingame and your child goes to St. Catherine's, you could request an assessment at public expense. So that's a great resource. A district has an ongoing obligation to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with disabilities residing in the district boundaries for special education and related service. And what I was saying earlier, child find, there's a relatively low threshold to evaluate students. So if we suspect a disability at any point, we do have the obligation to start the discussion around assessment for special education.
The next acronym, which is a huge one, is FAPE. This is your free and appropriate public education, which means that, you know, in special education, we are obligated as a district to provide related services that's prescribed by or described on the child's IEP. After a student has been evaluated and meets the criteria for special education, the district must offer this free and appropriate education at no cost to the kid. And also based on the student's needs.
And last vocab item, we just wanted to give you a background before we go over the next few. So LRE, or least restrictive environment. So as a public school district, we do have an obligation to educate students with disabilities with other children who are not disabled to the maximum extent possible. So what does that mean? To the maximum extent possible, we try to include students with disabilities in general ed activities. We refer to separate classes or separate settings only if a student's disability is the nature and severity of the disability cannot be accommodated in regular settings with supports through special education.
Next slide, please. So on the left side, you'll see general education, which offers to be the least restrictive as educational placement. As we move across to the right, you'll see that the educational placement is less access to a typical peer. They are not with their full, with their peers. The further we get to the right, the less the students are with their friends. When an IEP team meets, they're looking at a more restrictive placement for a student, but they're considered for the least restrictive, what that's called the Holland factor. What they're doing is trying to see the benefits for the student in that placement in a regular classroom, or the non-benefits of an inclusion factor for the students. And then the effect that the teacher is having and the other students in the classroom, whatever that disability may be for that student. At this point, Joelle's going to explain to you more about least restrictive. I'm going to let her do that.
So our next slide, actually our next two slides, how does this apply to Burlingame School District? So I've broken it up into elementary on this slide and then middle school on the next slide. So you'll see on the top what Kathy just presented, and then on the bottom, there's some of our Burlingame School District data. So beginning on let me make sure I have this right. So you're looking at on the left-hand side, we have approximately 93% of our elementary student population in general education. And moving over one, about 6.4 of our elementary students receive special education in a small group, either push in or pull out of general ed. So say, we have Mr. Benitez, that is a teacher, a special education teacher can push into the general ed classroom, provide services, or pull out a small group for direct services. Moving to the middle of our chart here, we have a very small population placed in the SDC setting. So that again is a separate classroom on a public campus. And these students typically require intensive support for academic activities. And a lot of our students in this type of setting participate in non-academic tasks with their typical peers, such as PE, music, art, etc. And lastly, we have very, very small population of students placed in non-public schools. The students who are placed at these NPS placements are significantly impacted by their disability, and we could not support them on the public school campus. Moving on to middle school. Starting on the left-hand side again, we have about 90% of our BIS students, full day general ed with their peers. And for small group and push in pull out services, we have some students that receive audiology services for hearing impairment. We have some students that still require speech language small group for a very small portion of their day. And we also have something really unique at BIS. We have a co-taught humanities program. So I was hoping, Kathy, would you mind telling us about your classroom?
So at BIS, a co-taught classroom looks a little like this. You have a general ed teacher and you have an education specialist or special ed teacher. We work collaboratively to differentiate curriculum for all the students. But while I'm in the class, kids with small groups or individualized support can come and see me. I work with them and we work with the entire class. What works for one works for all. The more differentiated the curriculum, the better for all the students. So it works really well. Also at BIS, we have 4 different types of educational settings. There's the co-taught, there's SAI, foundations, and SDC. I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Okay. And what that looks like. Okay, so the co-taught class is for students with a milder disability. So they're able to be in the general ed class pretty much with a co-taught teacher. SAI is mild to moderate type of disability. Foundations is a more moderate disability, and SDC is more moderate severe. Also at BIS, we have electives for the students can participate in. We have a skills class, which really focuses on their study skills and their executive function. So to help them with support in any curriculum they need to, any class they need to catch up on. They also have access to foreign language and any arts class, choir and art as an option.
Any questions so far?
I would just like to say thank you for breaking it down like that in those previous slides. That was really great to see it all with the percentages and everything and all written out. That was
I'm
excellent.
glad, because it is a large topic, and
Yeah.
I'm glad it
Thank you
makes
so much
sense.
for that. That was great.
I had one question. I just didn't know what wheels was.
So we'll actually,
Elective.
it's an elective, and actually it goes by trimester. So the students rotate between 3 different classes in the whole year. So in trimester 1, maybe you have art, trimester 2, maybe you have robotics and et cetera.
For instance.
Okay. And then exploratives is like the shop class maybe that I saw.
Actually, it's a science class. It's like
Okay.
forensics. It's actually really a great class for the kids because they're getting hands-on, they're lifting fingerprints, and they're doing, it's actually great work. So
It's kind of neat because they've tailored some of the elective periods based on the strengths of the staff that we have at BIS. Okay, so the next 3 slides, you'll see some pie charts, and I chose to present it this way just so you can see a visual. On the left side, we have the total population of BSD, and the right side, our special education population on each slide. So this slide focuses on race, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but we do monitor these on a regular basis. I'm really proud to say that actually yesterday, we got our state monitoring report. And we are not overrepresenting any particular race in special education. In previous years, we have been identified as overrepresenting. We also monitor underrepresentation.
Dr. Spencer, I'm gonna stop you on that for a second, because that's a huge feat. So
We're really excited.
again, like, I think you need to say that a little bit slower and explain a little bit more what that means to the department.
So like I was saying previously, we have over-identified certain subgroups, in particular, Hispanic youth being identified as having learning disabilities. So over the past few years, we've really focused on our pre-referral processes and creating awareness around over-identification and under-identification and child time, what we were just talking about. So hats off to our special ed department and then also our pre-referral teams at each site. So we're continually monitoring this and having conversations around it. And just visually, you can see the differences. A huge one, like I said before, is Hispanic youth identified in special ed. And then also, we do sometimes under-identify our Asian youth in special education. So we've really worked on those pre-referral processes, informing parents about the resources available to them and what it does mean to have a special ed evaluation.
Could you help us understand a little bit, Dr. Spencer? So I understand that we're no longer disproportional, right? Fantastic work. However, somebody looking at this graph would say, well, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because you just said we're no longer disproportional. But if I look at the graph, it looks like we have twice the number of our Hispanic and Latinx community as compared to what we have in attendance, and that's not disproportional. So help us understand that a little bit.
So actually, CDE has a formula, and I wouldn't be able to report out on that tonight. That's a huge topic. However, they pull this data on a continual basis, and then our October census data is the marker that they look for on our yearly reporting. So it's based on the whole state of California and whether or not we're disproportionately overrepresenting a certain subgroup or a certain student group.
So it's not based on BSD enrollment.
Right. Thank you for that question. It's a complex issue. This one looks at ethnicity, whereas the previous slide looked at race. So these are pulled from enrollment questions when a parent enrolls their child in the district. And this is a simple yes/no question, and it is reported to the state. So we're pretty consistent in our total population and special ed population with the Hispanic ethnicity identifier.
Which one does the state use when they're looking at overrepresentation?
The race identifier. And then lastly, we have what we call our unduplicated pupil percentages, or UPP students. We have done a lot of work around training with the differences between an English acquisition issue and what a language disability looks like. So oftentimes we have students that either are immigrants or learning English as a second language. And we like to make sure we're monitoring student risk factors and plugging them into resources to address any barriers they have to their education program. So also on this slide, we've depicted our vulnerable youth. So some of these students may have a lower income level as compared to the larger Burlingame community. We also have done a lot of work in our pre-referral processes to provide families and students resources, because sometimes difficulties in school can look like a disability, but when you really meet with the family, they may be experiencing some other factor that's impacting attendance or progress at school. Does that make sense?
And so the special education program highlights. The co-top humanities program at BIS received the Kent Award this past, well, spring 2019. I lost it. And Roosevelt Elementary has embraced the inclusive practice and currently serves preschool through 5th grade moderate severe population. They utilize the funds from the supporting inclusion practice support grant to facilitate training and support for students. BSD was one of the first districts to bring students back with disabilities back to campus in person for a small group cohort since the pandemic. That's a huge thing. And beginning January 22 this year, BSD is now hosting 2 special education students from a neighboring district with revenue gain of $45,000.
Okay, and our last slide. What are our next steps as a department? Really during the pandemic, a lot of our department colleagues and myself, we've seen that some families are struggling to get connected with local resources such as the Golden Gate Regional Center. And for those of you that don't know what GGRC is, it's a regional center that provides services outside of the school environment for families that have children with disabilities. So we're planning to partner with CDAC, our Special Education District Advisory Committee, to provide resources to family and educate our community on those resources. We also plan to continually monitor child fight and over or underrepresentation of student groups in special education. So that brings me to questions.
I have a question, Joelle. So we have a pretty good special ed preschool program, right? Are we finding that those children are coming in referred by GGRC, or are they just their parents just ask for an evaluation and we place them ourselves?
So it's interesting that you asked that. We saw some really strange things happen during the pandemic. So last school year, we had a decrease in referrals from GGRC and parent requests. And then at the end of the school year, we got a large influx. And as Kathy said earlier, a lot of them are students that have a private diagnosis of autism from their pediatrician. And sometimes they're on the older side, so 2.5 or 4 years of age. So this school year, we have had a continual stream from both GGRC and parent requested preschool evaluations. So we've seen an increase, and our preschool program has actually grown quite a bit.
Yeah, so you do think that because of the pandemic, parents didn't seek out GGRC, like maybe they didn't even bring their children to the pediatrician, whereas that's
Yeah.
usually where you start
Yes.
when you get that GGRC referral.
Right. I would assume so. It's difficult to tell.
Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you for having us both.
Yeah,
So
thank
informative.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
This is
did you
a
have something
really
else to
good-
add?
Pardon?
Did you have something else to add?
Oh,
No, I think you're done. Well, we thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Item 18B, ESD CAASPP Spring 2021 Results. There, they came.
Thank you. We are bringing forward tonight the CAASPP data that our students took last spring of 2021. If you remember, we took this, our students came back to school, and then we went right into CAASPP testing after being home for a year. So it was quite an event for our district. So CAASPP testing is the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. Our students in grades 3 through 8 take these tests. They take it in English language arts. They take science in grades 5th and 8th. They take it in Spanish for our dual language students, and that is all 3 through 8. And then students that have an IEP that are in an alternative curriculum, so California Assessment Alternative, they take a CAA. So the two SDCs that are at Roosevelt and the one SDC at BIS take an alternative test. Tonight we are bringing forward the CAASPP results on English language arts and math. These typically, for those of you that have been on the board, you know they normally come out very early in the fall to help us with our LCAPs and SIPSAs. They came out in mid-January and we're still just getting data in. So that is why we have a little bit of a lag on this. So they are a single point, as Chris loves to point out. I love the word snapshot. So this is just a snapshot of our students. We use them for our SIPSAs, which are our school plan for student achievement that you saw tonight for each one of our school sites, along with our LCAP, so our local control accountability plans. It is a part of what we use for our data. So they were not given in the 1920 school year. So what you will see tonight is all the data is comparing our 18-19 class. So it's actually skipping years. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So the first slide you will see is our student performance data from our 2021 school year. 73.6% of our students did meet or exceed standards within ELA. So then it is broken down by Asian. Students that speak an additional language that have been enrolled in a school in America more than 12 months. Doesn't necessarily mean Burlingame schools, so that's important to note. Economically disadvantaged. So if you remember, we had the transition where Diego left, Nate Wong just started last week. So the county did pull these. So a lot of the language that you use are not typical Burlingame language. So we like to use positive language and not deficit. So you'll see some interesting language throughout too. Our Filipino students are ranked in there too, along with our Hispanic or Latino. Reported disabilities, that's an important one because sometimes students with 504s, that's a question we get asked. That is not in there. 504s are not in there. Those are students that would have an IEP. 2 or more races, and then white. So the next one is our 2021 student group performance for math. Again, our percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards overall was 70.6. And then it breaks it down again by Asian ELs that are enrolled in the US for more than 12 months, economically disadvantaged, our Filipino, Hispanic, Latino, reported disabilities, 2 or more races, and white. We also have been working, we sent out to our sites a dashboard that gives a little bit more information for us to look. We have been pulling apart some of it, for instance, Hispanic Latino, to see where there's intersectionality, to see where we can further dig to see students. One of the things that we have been able to find, and that was one of the questions, is a lot of our students that are falling within the standard not met have intersectionality with vulnerable population. So we're really trying to dig deeper to see where there might be duplicated areas so that we can make sure that they are being invited to some of our after school or summer activities too. Male and female, this is one that actually Chris and I, this is one of Chris's first questions. He's like, pull the male and female. And it's always an interesting one for us to pull. So male and female on the left is ELA on the left and math on the right. And you will see that with ELA, our male and female, our females are meeting and exceeding at a higher rate. for ELA and for our math, more males were actually exceeding, which I have to say, for those of us that have been on the board, that was a little bit of a surprise when we looked at our math data. Our females have done it's been pretty even or a little bit higher. So when I looked historically, I thought that was a surprise. So,
I still like to look at the green and the blue. You
Right,
know, that's really-
absolutely,
it's really good.
absolutely, and they're right there.
It's so interesting that math is pretty even, but the English language is, that difference. And so part of me is just kind of wondering about, boy brains and how they absorb language in the early years. And is there a slightly, differentiated way to teach reading?
And I think it's more than reading. That's actually the reason I did ask Marla to pull this. This wasn't included in the county slide deck. Because we are actually seeing boys in not just California, but in the entire country falling further and further behind in academic performance in school. And it is actually exactly for the reason that you just suggested, which is that we expect boys, when they're growing up, to play school in a very traditional way that actually we know that doesn't work for them as far as brain development and physical development. So I was actually really pleased. I was looking for a slide that was going to have far more discrepancy on it, and I was actually really pleased to see the performance was more nearly equal than I anticipated, which is why I asked Marla to pull this slide, because I was anticipating a bigger discrepancy.
Did you look at it over the grades?
No, just overall. We just got the data the other day, and there's more to dig into. We actually have an interactive dashboard as well that we can use internally for the first time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see that as well. Yeah, it does.
And that's a lot of the work that the middle schools worked on over the last Burlingame Institute too.
Right. But my guess, if I had to bet $1, would be that you'd see a bigger difference between girls and boys in K-3. And I guess I just wonder, are there any empirically proven methods that tap into what helps a little boy or books and increase literacy sooner? Anything out there?
A lot of movement.
A movement.
Right,
but
I mean,
maybe
there's
not
gonna
the-
be a lot. The other thing is this isn't gonna represent K-3. This is just 3 to 8.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll
Oh,
get from
that's
our
true.
local assessments too. So all of our DIBELS data that we do, all of our benchmark assessments, that's what we'll have to pull into that and dig deeper into the boy girl within that realm too. And our iReadies. And I will say, so yes, it's exciting to see our meet next seated, but in ed services and with our principals, we also talk a lot about the red and that yellow, because we don't want our red to grow, and we also want to figure out how to push our yellow more to green. So those are the bandwidths that we look at really closely too. So the next slide, and I'm sorry that this got left off. So the blue should be the 19 students and the yellow should be the 21 students. And then the black dotted line is actually Met Standard. So if you look, both cohorts of 8th grade students far exceeded the Met Standard for the state of California, which is great. And both of them actually ended at the almost exact same spot. However, if you look, our 6th grade cohort in 2021 outperformed our 2019 cohort, which is interesting. So that's an interesting data point that we're like, wow. Yeah, so we'll continue to look into that one.
Yeah, I'm probably easier to approach online.
There was a lot of reading online. If you think about it, most directions were given online. Even videos they were watching, there was usually reading involved. There was a lot of reading during the pandemic.
And this is consistent with across the country. Right?
We're seeing that ELA is not as impacted as math, correct? I'm afraid if I hit it too many times, it's gonna jump, sorry. So what? It makes the noise. Amanda's the magic.
Is this the correct slide?
Math, thank you. Okay. So for math, so both cohorts 19 and 21 did exceed. However, you will see that our 21 cohort in 8th grade did not match to the 19 cohort. Again, our 6th grade cohort did do better in 21, which is interesting about that class. So one of the questions that we're asking is that class, have they overall historically performed at a different rate? So that's one of the questions that we are looking at. It'll be interesting when we come back from spring break, we get to start seat testing again. So we'll start to look at that too. So again, we keep looking at it, but even with the impacts, we still did outperform, but it is something that we're watching and we're continuing to look for.
Anecdotally, are the teachers saying they see holes in areas like that are relatively uniform that they can go back and target, or is it just this very difficult space to identify?
So I think Trustee Mudd, you're hearing a little bit because you're also on the math adoption committee. So as they're looking at curriculums, they're talking about really looking at ones that have the essential standards that they know can link up to as they go to high school, and especially working. We did have San Mateo Union High School District come in and talk about that and what they really want to see an incoming 9th grader have. So based on the pandemic stuff, we're not hearing that at this point. I think what they're looking for though is a really strong platform so that when students leave, that the 8th grade, the portrait of an 8th grade graduate in Burlingame, that the students have what's needed. I think they're still trying to figure out some of that. So they are doing a lot with iReady and through the different platforms and piloting. They're finishing their second pilot right now to be able to see kind of what they need to be able to get there.
It would be interesting because iReady gives the teachers, like it identifies like this cohort of kids or this child specifically doesn't understand number sense. It would be interesting to see if that aligns with what they were learning during like March, April, May of 2020, and then the fall. I'm not asking you to do the research. I'm just wrestling with this in my head.
Yes, I mean, yes, that would be interesting to look at. We'd have to go back and look at trimester report cards and stuff. I mean, if that's something that we're interested in, we could absolutely look at that too.
Not asking you
Yeah.
to do it. Yep.
Okay. Next slide, sorry. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next one, the dotted lines represent our class of 19 and our solid lines are the class of 21. Met standards is the hashed black line. So the performance was pretty stagnant between the 6th and 8th grade for our students that are vulnerable. The student group in the 21 cohort actually ended up outperforming the peers in the 19 cohort. I have to say, I think part of this is we brought our 21 cohort back pretty early. Pam brought back our vulnerable population almost right away. They were back very quickly in small pods. We were working with them really quickly. And so I think there was a lot of work. And kudos goes out to our IT department that, you know, we sent kids home 2 years ago this week thinking it'd be 2 weeks. And they turned around computers and hotspots and supports for kids so fast. And so and platforms were built and supports for teachers. And so I really think that there was not a lot of time when people didn't have access. And so I really think that it took a community of Burlingame educators and teachers to figure out how to do it and principals to support it that, you know, I'm really proud of the work that went in to make sure that students didn't have a lot of time without really strong teaching practices. And then with regards to students with disabilities or our students that speak an additional language, we didn't have enough aggregate scores to be able to get it, but what that means to me is we actually have names. So we're pulling that individually, not publicly. So we are looking into that too.
So on the slide, it's very interesting that the students in the Hispanic or Latino group actually performed better in 21 than in 19. Right? Is that what this is? That's what that's showing. The dotted line in green looks like they were more.
Wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a slide on mine. Going back. Okay, I'm sorry, I skipped a slide on mine.
So the two VSD eighth grade class cohorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, ELA growth model, like it shows that in 2019, our students within the Hispanic or Latino category were actually underperformed, they were lower than the state standard, whereas in 21, they actually were more likely to meet the state standard.
Correct. And our sixth graders did meet state standard along with our fifth graders and our fourth graders.
Yeah, it looks like they're on a trajectory to go.
Mhm.
Right, which, I mean, it's so interesting because, people talk about what were the silver linings of being home, learning, school stuff over the computer at home. If there's an issue about missing school or, for whatever life reasons, you're unable to get your body over into the classroom and learn the information, but when you're at home, whether or not your parent is there because they're working or not, you're still home receiving the information. So you're missing fewer days actually when it was home.
Right. And it's interesting you say that, because one of the other data points is that our truancy rate was actually really low last year. And it's because we did have kids signing in. And they were attending, even if for partial time. The other thing is we also had an increase in parent engagement. Through our Latinx family nights, because they were virtual. They were able to join from where they were. So we were able to do a lot around literacy and homework support and items like that too.
Has there been any discussion about the inflection point in every trend line when we hit BIS,
There has not been.
except for the Asian subgroup, which is an inflection, but the growth curve isn't impacted as much.
There has not been a meeting with the IS administration yet.
It's interesting. Why?
But isn't that the,
We're just looking at sixth grade, these, lines start going in the wrong direction.
Or they start
Or
growing less
flatten out.
quickly or flatten out.
Right.
but it's a cohort, right? This is the 2021 graduates. So that was 2019.
Yeah, you see it more dramatically in the 21 cohort, but you also see it in the 19. It's also interesting that two subgroups are significantly performing. They're still frequently hitting standard, but the Filipino and the Hispanic Latino subgroups are very specifically underperforming all of the groups. Yeah, there's occasional flips, but just in general.
Mostly actually 2019.
Mhm.
And that's similar with math too. We see that in math.
So, sorry, I'm going to keep asking questions. So, we have a separate middle school, which changes their environment and sometimes changing environments can make it more stressful for a student to learn. It's huge. Other things start happening. I'm wondering if schools that have, like, let's say K-8 on one campus, if they see something like this too, because the material just gets harder when you get into sixth grade, or is it a change of environment that is making it, happen like this?
It's an interesting question. The other question is in sixth grade, they still do, they're still trajectory up, and they have two core teachers there too, right? Sixth grade, they have a humanities teacher, a core humanities, and they have a core math science.
Right.
And then 7, 8, they start going single subjects.
Right.
So does it have to also do with relational and connections and people knowing them and knowing, there's a lot of questions there. So does that have to go into the SEL and the, partnership between home and school? It's great questions to look at it closer too.
It's only one data. It's only-
Yeah, exactly. It's one data point.
Okay, so
It's a snapshot.
we're just talking about one line on it, that has an inflection point that wasn't pandemic related. Only the yellow dot is on.
Yeah, no, we're just talking about education in general and how
Okay,
it
so the
looks
rest
like
of them are all.
when the kids go to BIS.
But the
The
pandemic,
trajectory is changing. The trajectory changes from when they were.
that's
in grade
2020, right?
So these are for the same students over time.
Same cohort. So it's the same.
Right, so the last data point is 2021.
No, so, sorry, the teacher in me is gonna stand. So this is the same group of students for 2021. Sorry, it's touchscreen, I forgot.
Well, that's how we get the slides. to them.
There we go. I'll just,
Which one?
poor Dan and Doug saw this last week and I was like, okay, let me stand up and do my slideshow.
Which one is it?
This is fine. Thank you.
Is that the right?
Yep. So the solid red represents the cohort class of white 2021 graduating class.
Graduated 2021.
Correct. And the red dotted is white graduated 19.
Yeah.
So they're in this class was in 4th grade, 19.
But in 6th grade, that was 2019.
And they were the graduating class, they would have been 2017. In 6th grade, This is 2017.
Kids in 6th grade, it was
then they would have been 2019
2019, yeah.
for 17.
So it's still on the upward trajectory. So then 2020 hits, right? So
I see. So you're
Yeah,
just
I
saying
see what you're saying. Yeah.
pandemic related.
Right, you're saying pandemic.
except for
Got
the,
you.
Filipino in 2019, that's the only one that's got any question that's not pandemic.
Two or more races. has some funny-
Yeah, I don't understand why 2 or more races have so many data points, because there wasn't data.
2 or more races is always the one that if you stay 2 or more races for so many years, then you go, or if you decline to stay for so many years, then you automatically roll into 2 or more races. So that number always fluctuates with us too.
But it's 20, it goes from 2019 to 2021.
21,
So there shouldn't actually be any bending in 7th grade. for the 2020. Okay, so it's the 2019.
19, yeah. No, but I mean, you bring up good points though, Elizabeth. So we pull this and then we start asking questions and then we go to each side and we ask questions and then we dig deeper and then we ask more questions and then you all give us questions so we don't even see
What I think is
too.
amazing is how steeply all the 2021 kids were going up. Until, I mean, they were on a real trajectory to do something.
Mhm.
So,
Assuming that that inflection point was COVID related and
right, and there's not
not,
data,
Right.
not grade change.
and there's no way to,
We don't.
Actually, we could have the same data pulled for the different cohorts by the county, so you have more comparison. They just gave us a pre and post pandemic group so that all of our boards can see potential impact of what.
I mean, just look historically, and see if we, in general, have.
Yes, they chose 2 cohorts pre-pandemic and post-pandemic.
But we did look at two pre-pandemic, like kids who graduated from BIS 5 years ago, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That would be very interesting.
Because it's not showing.
See if I can read it. All right. So ELA growth model, English learners, economically disadvantaged, so our vulnerable students with disabilities. This is the one that I was just talking about. So with regards to this, it's stagnant between our 6th and 8th for our vulnerable students. Our student group 2021 did end up outperforming our 2019 cohort, which is interesting. And then again, our SWD, our students with disabilities, and then our students that speak an additional language, the number is so low in 8th grade, so we actually don't show that publicly, but we do look at the names and the numbers. So these students are actually all smushed anyways. So we have a relationship with San Mateo Union. So some of you have met Director Brian Simmons, that's who we work with there. And we work with him and Dr. Sam Shulman, and we go over data with them and share reciprocity to be able to support.
Yes, we brought back subgroups quite early, right?
We brought back student groups really early.
Like, not just like.
We brought back students, we brought back, so one of the first groups that Principal Scott brought back was our students.
We are not implying that we broke any laws or disobeyed any rules, but we did get back, not classes, but we did get back some student affinity groups at the beginning of the year.
And I think you're seeing
Some learning
possible.
process.
BIS especially. And we were also, I mean, like Dr. Spencer spoke about, we were one of the first districts that brought back students with disabilities. And we had in-house testing before other districts. And so it says a lot about our teachers' belief that kids need to be here to learn. So something to be very proud of. So I'm gonna try it. All right, math. So this is our breakdown by race. So most of the student groups in 2021 saw a level off or a decline in math, which is true across everywhere, as Trustee Kendall, I think you said earlier, going forward across the state. Filipino and Hispanic and Latino students saw our sharpest declines in 8th grade. So again, we are looking to see, although these students are no longer ours, we're looking to see intersectionality and looking at other grade levels to also see if we can learn anything from this and what we can do differently. As you know, we have a curriculum adoption going forward that will start a new curriculum next year, but also looking at as we go into Burlingame Summer Academy this summer. Last year, there was a focus around academics and math was part of it. There will also be a focus this year, but what can we learn from this data, even on the snapshot, and do something differently? Our white student group had the largest gap in performance by 8th grade, comparing for both cohorts. So that was an interesting, it's a pretty large gap in between our 19 and our 21. So we are looking at that. So
This graph actually sort of supports what you were saying before, was that the trajectory would not have had that inflection point if not for the pandemic. Like this would argue that. At least it's that.
all right, so this breaks down again our students, our student groups. So again, our sharp decline with our students, our vulnerable students in math performance, but they saw a growth in ELA, which was interesting. And I have to say, for those of you that remember during the pandemic, our principals and our teachers did huge amounts of like book pickups, our library support staff, our RTI specialists. I mean, parents were going and they were dropping off books on porches. So there was a lot of reading, as we talked about. And math was definitely the area that we have some work to do in. And we know that, and we're going for a curriculum adoption, and it'll look at supporting both ends, extension and reteaching, and supporting the wholes. And so we're looking forward to that new curriculum, and we're one step closer. And then again, there's not a lot of trends for our students with disabilities or English learners. I will tell you though that the curriculum adoption is looking at, and one of the big pushes has been supports for students with disabilities and supports for students that are English learners. So sentence starters, stems, working around the 8 mathematical practices, and how do we bring those in and make sure that everybody can access them. So those have been a lot of the big topics to be able to ensure that everybody can access and support math. So we're looking forward to that. The other thing is with our tests this year, we did onboard a new ELA this year. So that'll be interesting as we do take our CAASPP scores going forward. Looking at our science tests and our Spanish tests, that data, as soon as we have that, we will be happy to provide that to you all too. So again, that's 5th and 8th for science, and then 3 through 8, they do the Spanish test that we can give you. And then just for our next steps, each site has been given their data, including their interactive dashboard that all of you have that's internal, because it does go down to very low data where you can really pinpoint one child. So we're very careful about that. And then our LCAP team is going to review it at our April meeting. We talked a little bit about data in May or in March, and we'll go a little bit deeper in April and see if we need to update any of our current goals. And then Ed Services also looks at all of this data and then updates our professional learning plan for the 22-23 school year, especially with our 2 new curriculums. And then we also look at areas of need where we want to dig deeper. And then our math adoption committee and our science adoption committee will be coming forward, but especially our math adoption committee will be bringing forward our TK through algebra by June of 2022 with a professional learning plan for you all. Are there any questions tonight?
But I'm going to make a comment. And it's just sort of a regular, I mean, a little more general, but just inspired by that. It's that if we can see that maybe some students who might be doing not as well as we want in school because they just can't get here, that school needs to be more flexible, like what the state allows us to do needs to be more flexible so that those students can access school, whether they're physically in the classroom or not. If the reason is that they just, whatever family reason, they have to be home. Because it's just missing the lesson is probably the biggest reason, as opposed to some, problem with learning. So
zooming in if your parent doesn't get able to.
right, but that all has to be approved by the state to allow us to do something like that, to make it count or whatever. But I just think that it's about accessibility, and that's I think a very interesting data that would support a more flexible model of what public education is and what counts, what we can do.
I think we've definitely learned that educational options help to provide education for a diverse group. And we've seen success in a lot of different educational options through this.
Right. That we wouldn't have known had this not all happened, but now we know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 19. A, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. Yep.
It's nice to see you again this year. Board of Trustees and staff. I am Howard Wetton. I'm the chair of the Bond Oversight Committee. It is now the Measure O Bond Oversight Committee. It's the successor to the Measure A, Measure D, and Measure N Bond Oversight Committees. I've been serving on these committees for about 10 years. Thank you. It is. It's I've been chair for 3 years now, and given this presentation, I always find it very helpful who might be listening to give a little bit of background of who we are and what we do. Most of you probably already know, but by statute, in order for a school district to pass a measure letter bond, there must be an oversight committee that ensures that the district is utilizing the funds for capital expenditures and benefits the schools for years to come, and does not use an operating budget. The committee is governed by, obviously it's appointed by the Board of Trustees and is governed by the Brown Act, just like you are. We actually did receive a Brown Act training this year, and this report will be on the 2020-2021 school year, so it lags behind. During the prior school year, we had 2 new members, Prentice Ing and Darwin Rodriguez. 1 member rolled off, former trustee Michael Barber. Other members of the committee are Karen Carney, Michael Jarrett, and myself. We have 2 new members that happened after the reporting year, Bob Rouse and Theodora Isadora. We are supported at all times by the facilities and bond coordinator to my left, Mr. Tim Ryan, who has been superb in his time with us, and our new chief business officer.
I'm still new.
And of course, drilling to run this, the lead architects, Rich Torontos and Rick Trout have also been at it for a long time. Always do excellent work. Everyone is very forthcoming about what the school is doing, how the funds are being spent. If there's any questions, they are always just completely responsive. So the bond committees encounter basically no obstacles in asking any questions. We have a couple members of the committee, Karen Kearney and formerly Mr. Brown, who have finance backgrounds, who are often asking very sophisticated questions about the financing. And again, all questions have been answered. It's probably a good time to say that there were no findings in the report that I've signed. things that we looked at in the school year I'm reporting about. As pandemic work accelerated to get projects done, schools weren't there, but given the increased costs in labor and materials, it didn't necessarily result in cost savings. Some of the topics we covered were storm drains, a lot of storm drain issues at both Roosevelt and Hoover, a lot of playground renovations, and we had a good conversation about the safety of those renovations. Of course, BIS. After the reporting year, we were able to when we finally came back. This reporting year was all virtual. When we finally came back, we met in one of the classroom modernizations. I'm sure you've all seen, they're beautiful. And of course, I can't leave out the commencement of construction for the new gym and the renovation of the auditorium BIS. So that concludes my report. It's nice to see you all. We are sorry that we should lose that ground, but we're looking forward to working with members and appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item 19B, resolution number 2021/22-12, adopting pre-qualification process for prime contractors pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 20111.6.
Thank you, President Wong, and trustees. Welcome to the two new trustees. Annually, we do a pre-qualification so that we're able to have a bar that contractors, subcontractors have to jump through. The Department of Industrial Relations has some qualifications. We've got this from our attorneys. We bring this to you once a year. We have to publish in a trade journal and in local papers, and we'll seek mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers on contracts over $1 million using this. And it's pretty straightforward. We have a resolution for you.
Any questions for Tim? There a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 2021/22-12, adopting pre-qualification process for prime contractors pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 20111.6.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 19C, resolution number 2021/22-13, adopting pre-qualification process for MVP subcontractors pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 20111.6.
This is the same process, but this is for mechanical and electrical plumbing subcontractors as opposed to the prime contractors before. Same process, and again, looking for board resolution approval so we can publish it. Again, the process of pre-qualification.
Any questions about this one for Tim? All right, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve resolution number 2021/22-13, adopting pre-qualification process for MEP subcontractors pursuant to Public Code Section 201.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 19D, McKinley Elementary School corner improvements schematic design.
Hi, I'm bringing to you tonight, back in December, the board added a project to the Measure O program, which was to make improvements at the corner of El Camino and Oak Grove. We brought to the board a design contract back in February, and tonight we're bringing you a design development schematic design so that we can come get this built this summer. Basically, what you're seeing is in the corner, we have a planter, and in that planter will be two large balls. You may have seen something similar in front of a Target. These are going to be painted in a rainbow, but they're going to be attached to a 6-foot post underneath. So they'll have a significant footing enough to stop a vehicle that would make it through the intersection. In 100 years, we've had one car ever spin out and touch the fence. So there was some thought that we needed to take some opportunity here to also soften the space with additional planting, as well as improve the safety and security of that corner. We're going to create, based on our planting master plan, plant selected so that we have low water use and as well as native to the environment.
That's
So
great.
tonight we're asking for approval of the schematic design.
Yes,
Right.
very creative.
And so that the fencing is just around the edges, right?
Yes,
So
and there's a bench in front and it's a, I'm gonna walk over with my.
Just don't have that whole arm.
There's a little bit of a seating around the front.
that's nice. I like really nice.
It is. So the mic is actually less for the us in the room, it's more so the YouTube channel can pick up the voices. Right.
Yes.
It says it's on.
Okay.
So tonight, we're looking for approval of the schematic design so we can move forward. Construction documents to go out a bit.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve McKinley Elementary School corner improvement schematic design.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
And 19E, California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, Resolution 2021/10 and Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 311.1.
All right, thank you very much. Currently, Burlingame School District requires a competitive bid for public projects involving expenditures of over $15,000. If we elect to participate in the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, also known as CAASPP, public projects of $60,000 or less may be performed by negotiated contract or purchase order. Public projects of $200,000 or less may utilize an informal bidding process as described in subdivision B of section 22032 of the Public Contract Code. All licensed contractors will be invited to apply to the district for inclusion on the district's list of registered bidders each calendar year. And I also wanted to note that for the BP and AR, this is a first and final read. We do have BP and AR 3311, which is specific to bidding. The new .1 is for CUPCA only.
Questions? about this? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, resolution number 2021-22-10 and BP AR 3311.1.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 19F, fiscal year 22, second interim report.
Okay, tonight we are bringing forward the fiscal year 2022 second interim report for review and vote. Want me to- These are the budget assumptions that were used to create the second interim report and the multi-year projections. The only change over first interim is the 22-23 school year and 23-24 school years COLA, which are now at 5.33% and 3.61%. This is a view of all funds, our general fund, which include transfers in and out of the general fund to other funds that I will present later. Total revenue at first interim was projected at $44.6 million. And at second interim, there's a $10,000 variance. We're still at roughly $44.6 million. Total expenditures at first interim were $45.7 million. And for first interim, second interim projections are $46.2 million with just under a $500,000 variance. Most of that variance is in transfers out. Next slide. Here are our general fund revenues compared. No change to our LCFF sources because we are still using our hold harmless ADA. Federal revenue had slight changes to Title I and Title II. At budget and first interim, we were still working off of the 2021 school year numbers. The current year had not been allocated yet. We had an increase to our local grants for an overall increase of $10,000 in revenue. Here are our general fund revenues. Oh my goodness, expenditures. Sorry, guys. First interim, our certificated salaries were $20.4 million. We are just over that now with a just under $60,000 variance. We had a staffing change at one of our school sites. Our classified salaries increased just over $3,000. This one is a little tricky. First interim did not include our negotiated salary increases, but we also reduced over first interim. We had some hourly allowances for additional hours that have not been used. Other changes, there were just an $8,000 change to books and supplies. That was with some of changes to our COVID funding and balancing out some of our resources. And our services and other operating expenditures are down by $60,000. We have some reduced operating costs with our sites not being fully reopened. And that was also a difference from first interim to second interim of just over $10,000. Our multi-year projections, as you can see, for 21-22, revenues are at $45.8 million. Next year, 22-23 school year, we are projected to be at $40.8 million. That is part of the decrease is due to hold harmless falling off. Our ADA and our enrollment is down over the 19-20 school year. We also will see a decline in COVID revenues. So most of them are allocated in this fiscal year. We will have some carryover that we will see a budget that we will still spend next year, but we will not receive any new COVID revenues next year. Our expenditures are expected to go down this year, next year by just over $3 million. You will see later when HR presents that that has to do with eliminating some of our staffing positions. So in 21-22, we have a deficit of $460,000. In 22-23, we have a projected deficit of $2.6 million. And in 23-24, we have a projected deficit of $650,000. Our projected fund balance goes from 18% in this fiscal year down to 11.52% in 23-24 school year.
Amanda, can you just speak briefly to the improvement in these numbers versus the first interim, particularly the 2022-23 deficit number?
At first interim, I do not have that, what we were projected.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So at first interim, we did not have the eliminated positions ready to go. So that is that, am I answering?
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
sorry.
think
So
mainly just highlighting how much better. It is
okay,
than
yeah,
it
sorry,
was
thank
in
you.
the first-
Yeah,
the
we were,
last interim,
I
first
believe
interim.
we were over $4 million at first interim. And a large change is due to the decrease or the reduction of staffing that will come forward.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend everyone for improving that number substantially versus the first interim.
Yeah, so 2 years ago, it was $9 million deficit. Right? And next year, there's a significant change in revenues, as Amanda mentioned. But really look at 2 years out. Our goal is to get that to $500,000 or less, which would essentially balance our budget. And we haven't had a balanced budget in some time. So thank you.
Here are enrollment projections for the 21-22 school year. Our enrollment that we used was our CVETS number, and ADA is at roughly 97% of enrollment. These are our actual numbers, not what we are currently funded on in the 21-22 school year. 22 and 23, the 22-23 school year through the 24-25 school year, you can see that we have a little increase in 23-24, but we are basically staying flat in our enrollment, and that is due to the expansion of TK. If not for TK, we would be in declining enrollment. And one thing to know about our enrollment is that they're part of the proposed 22-23 school year budget is that they schools may be funded off of enrollment, not ADA. And so that would really help our 3-year average over the next 3 years. Luckily, our students do come to school. We won't see, there are many schools in California that are in the low 90%. So for us, it's not a huge jump, but we are very happy. Any increase in funding we can see. We will learn more about that at the May revision, and whatever is presented at May revision, that is how we will use those for the budget, knowing that on July 1st, it could look a little different.
Our ADA is about 97%.
97.65, it's very high, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so our general fund beginning balance was just over $8.8 million, and we have a projected ending balance of $8.3 million. This includes our 3% statutory reserve of $1.3 million, a restricted reserve of nearly $1.7 million. That is the remaining of COVID funds that we expect to roll over until next year. And we have an unassigned ending fund balance of $3.5 million. In our Fund 08, our Student Activity Fund, we will not see any changes to this until we close out the books on unaudited actuals. It will be updated with the actual balance that BIS houses. Fund 13, our Cafeteria Special Reserve Fund. We had a beginning balance of $245,000, and we have a projected ending balance of $250,000, which is restricted for food service. Each month, I know in our reports, you do see that we are currently, our revenue is exceeding our expenditures. Those additional funds have been committed to cafeteria improvement at each of our sites, dishwashers and stuff like that. So you don't see them as they are committed funds.
To the new folks, we always ran a big deficit. We're talking like $20,000 and $30,000 per month. We would lose money. Yes.
It's the new student meals for all are paid for. So that's right.
So we did receive word yesterday that Congress did not pass the waiver for next year to extend the child nutrition additional funds. So this will go through June. It's lovely. It will not look like this next year.
We're back to losing
Yeah.
money probably.
Well,
The state of California, actually, we might still do it.
yeah. Yeah. But we do receive federal and state funds. We show them to you as a whole, but we do have separate funds for each.
And so students will go back to paying for lunch.
No,
This-
the free lunch, breakfast and lunch for all actually starts in next fiscal year for everyone. Currently, we're receiving almost $1 more per lunch served, and that part is going away.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, California has committed to keeping the free breakfast and lunch for all. They're hearing good things about that, particularly from voting parents, taking a little bit of pressure off the home. And it's the augmentation that we've been receiving during COVID. We get our typical reimbursement, but they've been augmenting it because of the pressures of COVID to make sure that we're serving. So that's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Felt like a good stopping point, but a couple of things.
It's okay. It's okay. You can just finish.
Okay.
verbally.
So our Fund 14, our deferred maintenance fund, had a beginning balance of $423,000, and we have a projected ending balance of $286,000. These funds are reserved for major repair or replacement of plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electrical, roofing, and flooring. Fund 17, our special reserve fund for funds other than capital outlay, had a beginning balance of $7.8 million. We have a projected ending balance of $6.9 million. This fund includes our 7% local reserve of $3 million, our strategic foundation support reserve of $2.5 million, our technology replacement fund of $300,000, and math and science adoption of just over $1 million. And the technology and math and science are year to date. That is not enough funds to pay for everything that we need to do.
And we'll be starting to save for new adoptions in those funds.
Yes, this we will continue to. In May, I will bring forward a resolution that states that to help us with for budgeting reasons. Our Fund 21, our building fund, which is our bond, had a beginning balance of $50.8 million, and we have a projected ending balance of $21.4 million. This is proceeds from the sale of bonds, construction only. We do have POs encumbered currently that may not actually be paid for in this fiscal year. So when we close out the books, the ending balance may rise a little bit, and then early in next fiscal year, it'll shrink back down. Fund 25, our capital facilities, which is also our developer fees. And if you were lucky enough to go to the city liaison meeting, you heard all about these. Our beginning balance was just over $1 million, and our projected ending balance is $1.1 million. Fund 40, our special reserve for capital outlay, is our fund that we use for the turf replacement at both Augsburg and Franklin Fields. We had a beginning balance of $916,000, and we have a projected ending balance of just over $1 million. These are both year to date. We have an agreement with the city that when it is time to replace the fields, we will pay for half of them, and the city will pay for half. We do need to hold enough to pay for the whole replacement on the off chance that the city does not meet their obligation. So we will continue. These are both year to date to save money for those. Fund 73 is our foundation private purpose for Augsburg Scholarship Foundation at BIS. We had a beginning balance of $15,000 and an ending balance of $15,000. And apologize, switching from thousands to millions always, it's like, what? So are there any questions?
I asked this last year and I can't remember the answer. What is the Augsburg Scholarship Foundation?
It's money that was donated on behalf of the former assistant principal of BIS. for deserving students each year. And that balance will remain until all of the money that's been donated by community and family members is depleted. Goes to 8th grade graduates every year.
And they use it for, in theory, it's for their education. But it's usually one girl, one boy. All right. Oh, you have another question? No, that's okay. Any other questions? All right, so this is a vote. So is there a motion to approve fiscal year 22 second interim report?
I move to approve motion 22 interim school year report.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Right. Number 20A, board committee assignments. Exciting.
Yes, this is just set aside for you to review and make your committee appointments.
All right, so this wasn't just going to be kind of a, fill in for Deepak and Kate. We're going to shuffle a little bit around, just the schedules are changing and obligations are changing. Okay, so I took into account various people's interests as well as their schedules. Let's just go down the list. So the first one, so these are our standing committees on this list. BCE. Doug, you had some interest in?
Sure.
Okay, so Doug will be our primary. Okay, and we always have an alternate in case for some reason you can't make it. You're okay with continuing? Okay. So, alternate. All right, bond oversight committee. It is something that Doug had in his schedule anyway.
Yeah, I'm
So
happy to stay on that one. I know how it works.
Okay. Unless someone wants to fight him for that. No?
Are we just saving time? Is Doug going to do all of them?
We'll see.
Okay.
Right, yeah, and then Elizabeth, you were the alternate. Yeah, all right, for the ESC board liaison, I will stay with that. And Elizabeth, are you okay being the alternate still on that? I think so. Yeah, that's fine. And then the city district liaison person, the two board members that go are usually the president and the person on the end.
Okay.
So, are you okay with that? Okay, so it's going to be me and Dan. And alternate board member, Lisa, did you want to be the alternate? Okay. So this is the alternate for district advisory. What's that stand for? Lisa, do you want to keep that? I can keep that. And then I can stay as the alternate. All right, DLAC, Dan said you were interested in DLAC prep. Okay, so Dan, I can stay the alternate unless somebody else wants to. Okay, H.J. Burns Award is just the president and the vice president have to do it. So it's just Lisa and myself. And there's no need for an alternate. This is like a super short span of time, like one conversation. It's just, okay, so for the JEDI committee that rotates, so you'll be, I guess we'll have like a Google Doc and we'll decide. Or is that?
President Kendall actually had assigned people through the end of the year.
Yeah, how did that,
It's a Google spreadsheet.
Right.
They're not-
right, they're not on it, so I guess you share it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Elizabeth will share that and just. For owners committee, we have Lisa and Elizabeth on there. Did you just want to continue out the year? I would say in the future, since both of you have been on it a couple of years at least, to open it up to other people.
I would, I'm open to opening it up. I've been on it for years.
Okay.
I'm clean back on the board a year.
It
Would
just
you
seems,
been on
it just
it a couple
seems like
years?
longer.
That was so funny. I mean, well, do either of you? have an
Sorry, can you
interest?
describe what the owners committee does?
I actually think owners
It's
is
a great
somewhat
committee.
similar to bond oversight almost. And
It's-
You're hearing the same.
It's basically all of the items that we have on consent for construction go to the owners, which is two of the trustees and myself with Tim. And they review and make sure everything is in line for presentation to the board for approval.
Usually Richard goes and.
And yep,
Wow.
evidently, being a manager makes it fun. So we do it, we just review, we also review progress on the project so that the board is up to date.
Right, and Tim kind of reviews, is this too much information or too little information to present to the board? So he kind of talks about that in the owners committee, and then you can give him advice on the board presentation itself. But you kind of learn about what projects are happening before the rest of us hear about it. I don't know, do either of you have an interest in being on?
I'm happy to do it. If that works.
So instead of Lisa, we'll put Dan and Elizabeth, and then you want to be the alternate then? Lisa? Okay, so we'll make Lisa alternate. PTA council, Lisa has volunteered to stay with that. I cannot be the alternate anymore because their meetings are exactly conflicting with the meeting I have every other month, so just always. So, is there anyone who would like to be the alternate for PTA council? Right, you can't do that.
So the PTA council is also discussing whether they're going to start alternating times between a morning after meeting and an evening meeting. I haven't spoken to them about that yet because I just heard it announced this morning, because more evening meetings aren't going to light my life up, but it might mean that more of you can attend.
Right.
The 7 or 7:30 p.m., which is the proposed time we're discussing.
Okay.
But I don't have a final on that yet. That was just this morning. It was thrown out there.
Okay, well, for the meantime, we need to put somebody in the alternate. So I know, Dan, you can't do Tuesday mornings.
Can't do more, if it moves to the evening. I can do alternate.
But Doug, are you okay being the alternate? for
Yeah,
that?
I can be the alternate.
It's very rare that you would have.
I'll be able to.
Talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually really an interesting meeting to go to. I was on it for different reasons for years, and every PTA president goes. I mean, it's very interesting. You get a real feel for the sites and what they're doing.
And you would have heard a preview of our outdoor education.
Yeah,
presentation, right?
sounds like it was very animated.
People were very energized over the topic.
So San Mateo County School Board Association meetings.
Yeah, I was wondering about this one.
So this
Why do
one,
we have this on?
I guess it's just to have maybe somebody from ESD go to those monthly meetings. I mean, it's open to anybody.
Yeah.
All of us can go, but I think it's just a way to get at least one of us to go. They're all virtual still. So, Dan, you were saying about.
Is that the invite that you sent me to last week that I did?
Yes. Sure.
On the masking.
No, that was a separate one-off with.
That's
session.
But they're not really doing.
Special
much
session.
different.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, they're having some at night and some during the day. still, right?
No, it's always a night. It's always like a.
So they're
Monday
all night Zooms,
They're always, yeah.
and then there's the county superintendent.
Well, that's all just up to us if you want to do it. But this is more formalized, I guess, where they have the county school board association has a meeting every month. So,
It's gotten a little cloudy with the pandemic, so all these different Zooms, that's like. kind of
yeah,
hard to-
but I'd say this is the only one we're talking about, is that one that's like Monday nights, and they always, it's like their board almost really talking about their issues. It used to be where you would go and it would, I mean, meals sometimes. I mean, it was like.
Yeah, I used to go to those.
Yeah, those were like a
Yeah.
big deal, but now it's all just on Zoom. I mean, it is a way to talk to other board members from our county.
I'm sure it'll change things. Would it make sense for that to be a rotation as well, or does that? make things
Oh,
harder?
that's interesting. Yeah, that's an idea. We could try to rotate that as well.
I need to have a report out.
Okay. You guys feel like a rotation? Okay, because I think that, because it's a night thing, all of us could probably manage that once in a while. Okay, so let's do rotation. Kirsten, can you find out when those meetings actually take place and put it in Google form? Just first come, first serve on which one you want to get. Okay, this district rep for county committee on school districts. I don't even really know what this is.
They have like a meeting of all the,
Yeah,
one representative from every district. And people and stuff.
okay, it looks like just whoever's president has to go to that. So that'll be me. You want to be alternate as we.
President Wong, I do have the JEDI meeting scheduled. Assistant Superintendent Silversmith shared it with me if you wanted to finalize that this evening.
Okay,
There's only one coming up. So April, we had one March 14th, which was Deepak. April 18th is Florence. May 16th was Kate, and June 6th is Lisa. So the only one we need to replace would be May 16th.
okay. So the JEDI meetings are usually a Thursday at 3:30. And May 16th is the day. And we don't usually know the topic being discussed until.
We have a live agenda that's shared with you all. We can make sure that Doug and, actually, you both have it from our onboarding.
And then usually Monday afternoons.
I'll do it in May.
Okay, so Dan, May 16th. Did you have a question about the science committee, Marla?
Yes, we talked about it briefly on your onboarding. If either one of you would like to join us. We have a few days left for the science committee. We have April. We're looking at April the 6th. And
It's like 9 to 2, right?
it's 9:30 to 3:30 for science.
9:30.
Correct. And then we are hoping to bring it forward to the board in May. So if all goes well, it'll come May 17th. So April the 6th would be our last day,
Oh, okay.
if you're able to attend. And if not, again, we're happy to have somebody, President Wong has joined us a few times. And,
Well, there's only one meeting.
There's only one
so
meeting left.
It's really not a series of meetings.
Yeah, so I'll be out of town that week. So.
I cannot make it. April 6th.
Okay. Trustee Wong, I'm happy to, I believe you all have access to the slide decks and everything. We've gone through the rubrics, and I can make sure that both of you also have that. And then the presentation will also go through everything that we've done, and Trustee Reed has been with us
Right.
for many of the information sessions.
It's not required.
No.
We asked trustees to participate because our curriculum was so out of date, and our teachers wanted to have trustees and committee hear discussion.
I'll do April 6th. I can do it.
Okay.
Not that I'm all that helpful, but I.
Oh, you are.
You've joined us already.
I know.
We'll welcome you back.
Okay.
And they are currently piloting, so that's exciting.
Oh, yeah, so we hear, interesting to hear. So for parcel tax, that's really like more an ad hoc thing you're doing. Often for that,
I'll
we
need
have
more.
we usually do 2 board members, and it's often the newest people. So.
Which is how I.
I'm hearing a trend.
Right
over there.
So parcel
I'm
tax.
handing it
you
over
wanna-
to you
you wanna
guys now.
Tell them what it's like.
Well, there's not a whole lot to report on right now. What I'm thinking about is just if we're going to proceed, and in our last meeting, we decided that we would proceed, but I don't think that we decided on what.
That's how those meetings go.
What we were gonna actually proceed with. We'll have to do another study and see what plans are.
Are you?
And it would be in spring, so
But are you making the day or the night?
Usually the afternoon, after the teachers are out.
Oh, yeah.
In the year.
In 1 year from now.
That's the action, or that's the next meeting.
That's when we vote.
No, the next
We-
meeting is gonna
it- In terms of having
Feels
the,
bad.
like how heavy the load is, I don't know, I've never done. So maybe Florence or more to say.
Serving in the meetings is different than actually chairing.
Yeah, you wouldn't be sharing, you just sit there and hear what they're talking about.
What's the frequency?
Yeah, like I said.
And I think it's been every other month right now.
Yeah, but it will increase, we will probably increase as it gets closer.
Yeah, I will take it on.
Okay. Alright, and that's all I had on my list of things. Yes. Kirsten, was that pretty clear who's on what?
Perfect, thank you. Press that one.
Thank you for your time, trustees. All right, so 20B, board meeting date change for May.
We're just asking for a date change for our May board meeting from May 17th to the 31st. This allows us to incorporate all of the May revise information into the first read of the proposed budget for next school year. So it's as accurate as possible before actually asking the board to vote on it in June.
We have an owner's meeting that.
Yeah, that'll get bumped.
It already been,
There we go. Yeah.
she's like,
Yeah, makes sense to me.
so it's been moved to May 31st. Sound okay? Is there a motion? We have to vote on this to approve this one. Well, I'll make the motion to approve board meeting date change for May 2022. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And 20C, how student voices are included district-wide.
This was a board requested item for discussion. And tonight is the opportunity for the board to discuss. So the topic came up this past fall to discuss the idea of student voice and where it belongs with board discussions and district-wide work. We did talk to our principals briefly, and they came up with a lot of different areas which students are involved in, including in the community through their sites. And I think that Trustee Kendall, it was your requested item if you want to discuss.
Yeah, you know, I believe the CSBA meeting hearing about student board representatives. As we talked about how that would not be something we wanted to do probably in our district, having students in an entire meeting. But actually they do have middle school students who serve on boards. So I was asking them about that. But the idea was to see how do we incorporate, exactly the students' voices in these discussions. We hear from a lot of adults and we hear from teachers, we hear from parents, we hear from administrators. We don't always hear from the kids who are actually being impacted themselves. It's great to see this list of items in here where we're talking about how students are already included. As I was thinking about this item, we don't want to add any burden to anybody right now, especially. But maybe it could be more of just a philosophy that, we are asking students their opinions on different things. Tim's been doing such an amazing job here on this facility item. He asked about the playground, or whatever it is. For example, like, maybe I just don't even know, right? Probably. So when we're piloting the curricula, we're doing this. So maybe when we hear, like if we give a survey or we're asking kids their voices, maybe it's good to hear back from.
There's a slide on that for both curriculum adoption and student voice.
Because that was one of mine, was just like, are we asking the kids about this? So I would say in my ears, like house, I hear a lot of student voice. So just saying that. They do have very strong opinions about a lot of things.
Right, for sure through owners committee, we've heard lots of times when student voice was shared, like Tim sought out student voice.
Isn't there, don't we also do something similar to thought exchange with the students? Is
We
there
have on
a
a
period where they get to give
We
feedback?
do the California Healthy Kids Survey
Oh.
in 7th and 5th grade. Fifth is opt-in, 7th is opt-out, and so we get a lot of student voice in there.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and also I was wondering if we wanted to add something that was like more DSD. It doesn't have anything, the student, the healthy choice survey, does it have any academic questions on it? It's mostly about social emotional.
It's about connectedness in schools
And how you deal with your, yeah, but like maybe we would have just a few questions we asked them that were relevant to us about how they're learning or. And maybe not, maybe this is not an appropriate necessary thing, and maybe it's just that whenever we have a presentation, you know, you ask students for their voices, we just hear that.
Could we have a student report quarterly or something like that? Or like a split it accordingly, or some of these topics?
Yeah, so I thought of like, well, we could pick one topic report, collect input from the kids, have the kids present, this sounds like a lot of work, right? Like, maybe you would have the kids, at each school have one discussion topic per quarter, and then they could talk to the other schools, because we have these like nice TVs with all like talk to them. But it was something we had talked about early on, was that that's what they would use them for, to talk to the other schools. There are all sorts of things you could do, but those do all sound like a lot of work for the district.
We
But
also
I
have
would just like
student,
to-
we also have student voice at every board meeting, and so maybe there's some questions that we can give the students prior to coming and saying the pledge to.
I would say my.
Because there is student voice at every board
Already
meeting,
there.
from every
Right.
school's represented throughout the year.
I would say that my own polling, maybe in my house, so that maybe that is not a place that kids are feeling comfortable with speaking out.
Oh,
So maybe a classroom conversation somewhere where they feel a little more
So,
comfortable.
but I think when you start going in that direction, you're getting into curriculum.
Yes,
And
I
as
hear
a
what you're
teacher
saying.
now yourself, you realize that actually
That was a good.
that's not something that the board can interfere with. That is specifically up to the teacher to deliver the curriculum that they're assigned and responsible for, not for us to tell them what they will be teaching. It actually goes against academic freedom. However, there are many forms where our teachers do, particularly at BIS, through their affinity group classes or through Trojan Time, or some of their community groups, that they have those interactions. So I think student voice seems to be pretty active here. You're not the only one that hears from students. We hear from students a lot. I think that your original conversation was, how does the board hear more of that? So I would ask, yes, that we not create work to give to folks that are already working, to say, hey, here's this other thing we want you to do on top of your job. Because I think we have quite a bit of that already for our principals and teachers. So I want to be really careful of that.
Is there a student council at BIS?
They don't call it that, but what do they call it? It's the student,
Interaction council.
or students in action. And then they also have,
Oh, that's just
they also have a student council as well.
No student council?
They also have some activity groups that are working on things like dress code. I know that was a hot topic this year, even though I'm not quite sure why it was a hot topic, but folks' heads coming to BIS after it reopened, it seemed to be a hot topic. So
Yeah, so I thought this through as well about how, because it came from the CSBA idea of having a student representative, but that was onerous on the students. So I'm trying to think about it. So I think that overall, my opinion would just be, could we hear, as a philosophy, we want to make sure we're including student voices and can we hear feedback when it's appropriate, or, you know, say the curriculum. Put that in. So I think we don't probably want to have representatives. on the board.
yeah, I think developmentally, it's a lot to ask of an 11 or
Yeah.
12-year-old to sit for 3 hours and listen to school business, no matter how intriguing we might find it, or discussions we might want to have on data inflection points. I don't think that that's a reasonable ask. It is of a high school student, particularly if they're getting credit for it and they've gone through training and that they actually have a voice at board meetings on the topics, but I think that's a little different. Just personal, being a high school teacher.
Is there anything that prevents a student from coming to give public comment at any other member of the
Not
public?
at all. We unless it's a hot topic that folks are really interested in, our typical attendance is usually our head of HR.
Because she goes last.
Because she goes last. And yeah, we, other than the initial start, when somebody comes up and does the pledge, For small school districts, that's not all that unusual. Prior to COVID, before the schools were on the news 5 days a week, in one form or another, this was actually typical attendance at most school board meetings in the country. It's typically just a school business meeting held in public. The fact that we are broadcasting now, we actually always do get folks that watch it both live and go back and watch the recording. We actually have a following on YouTube. I never thought I'd say that in my life, but there you go. But live attendance at board meetings, not really a high demand thing. Most folks, even trustees, you don't necessarily see it. A lot of the board meetings before they volunteer to serve on the board.
Past, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when I would come to a board meeting, the person who said gave the pledge of allegiance, like we would, or you guys would ask like a few questions, but they were very like softballs, like what's your favorite subject?
Yeah, Elizabeth would ask questions to
Yeah.
each other this past year, but when we came back to one.
You know, that's not what you're getting at.
No, and the more we can hear from them, their perspective. the better. They're the ones who-
So if there's ever an agendized topic that's far enough in the future that you want to hear something, then we can ask, but it would be nice to know which of those topics versus going out and trying to figure out what
No,
people
no,
think about everything. That's a very different sort of ask.
And I was thinking the same, in your future, my question was about the curriculum.
Yeah.
That's-
We will tell you how much they love their new textbooks,
Well, like one
how
thing
excited
is-
they are about them.
it would be amazing to hear from the student that won the award. I mean, that would be a great
Yeah.
topic.
I actually
for them
found out
to
about
come
that
in,
from the trustee.
you know, somewhere, but,
Yeah. From the county. office of it.
mhm.
Kira, not too much. Yeah. It's on our
And by the way, it's on our Instagram.
Instagram.
Thank you.
Right, so something like that, actually, that's a great suggestion. We could have him maybe be part of our science curriculum conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. That brings the kids back to focus. What do we do?
Right, absolutely. Okay. Anything more about this?
I think that's- Thank you for bringing it here.
Sure. Okay. Move on to 21A, Board Policy Administrative Regulation 1240, Volunteer Assistance.
I could be loud.
Good evening. I'm bringing tonight an update to our current policy 1240 for our volunteer assistance. So we are going to adhere to state regulations for California public school volunteer requirements, and we will require all volunteers to provide the district office with a negative TB test or a TB risk assessment prior to allowing them to volunteer on
Right, can I ask about that? Because when I read it, it sounds like if you can attest to not having any risk of having acquired TB anywhere, like you didn't travel to a high TB area, if you attest to that, then you don't need to show that you took a TB blood test.
Correct.
Right.
So the risk assessment.
So the risk
So-
assessment is going to be, it's a small questionnaire that the volunteer will go ahead and, sign off on. And then they will need to bring it to their doctor to have the doctor sign off on that.
On their attestation.
Correct.
I see, okay,
It has to be attested to by a professional medical.
I see, okay, not just themselves.
Yes,
That's what I was.
you don't get to fill it out yourself.
Okay,
so-
that's what I wasn't sure, because I was reading at that, like, well, it's not actually much different than what we've been doing. because
Right.
The person could just say, well, I haven't been. to
Exactly.
wherever."
Yes.
I see,
It
okay,
still requires them to seek medical.
it does, okay. Right, okay,
So this will be new for our district because we previously have not been adhering to it.
right, we were doing the fingerprinting.
Correct. Always doing the fingerprinting.
Right, but not that. No. Okay. Great, all right, any questions about this one? All right, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve board policy and administrative regulation 1240, volunteer assistance, first by Holly.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. 21B, resolution number 2021/22-14 regarding reduction in particular kinds of services certificate. Great.
So in a continued effort to have the district budget be fiscally sound and to align with the March 15th notification requirement, I bring forth for your approval, resolution number 2021-22-14, reduction in particular kinds of services for certificated staff. This resolution totals a reduction of 4.9 FTE of positions that are currently vacant or will be vacant by the end of this school year because of resignations. Due to continued monitoring and assessing of the budget and staffing, we are able to eliminate vacant positions and not initiate layoffs.
Okay, any questions about this? All right, is there a motion to approve?
One question,
Sure.
the resource specialist, what is that we're not filling?
So it's not that we're not filling it, we're reducing it. So it was one full FTE. And so with current students, there's not a need for a full-time at a particular school at Roosevelt. And so we're reducing it to a 0.6. So that 0.4 can just be eliminated.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve?
Right?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve 21B resolution number 21/22-14 regarding reduction in particular kinds of services.
All right, I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 21C resolution 2021/22-15 regarding reduction in particular kinds of services classified.
So in alignment with the March 15th timeline, I bring forth for your approval, resolution number 2021/22-15, reduction in particular kinds of services for classified employees. The approval of this resolution will total a reduction of 6.5 FTE of positions that are currently vacant. Again, reduction of these vacant positions alleviates the financial need to initiate layoffs. Questions?
What is a campus supervisor?
Sure. So those positions are currently at BIS only, and they are 0.75, usually FTE of staff that kind of roam the campus during classrooms to make sure the students are appropriately in their classrooms. And then they also monitor recess and lunch.
Getting on the bus.
And then getting on the bus at the end of the day.
Big deal.
Yes, it is. It is. And monitoring the construction sites.
Oh, yeah. Any more questions about it? All right, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve resolution 21C, resolution 2021-22-15 regarding reduction in particular kinds of services classified.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Number 22, public statements related to non-agenda items.
There are not a present one.
All right. Number 23, board requested items. So far, we have a discussion of the Roosevelt pilot bell schedule.
We're just discussing that.
In April.
Probably, oh, so the next one.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so this is your chance to bring up a topic that you might want, a presentation on during the board meeting. If you bring it up, and at least two other people on the board say, yeah, sure, I'd like to hear that too. Then it gets on this list, and then when it's feasible to do with staff time, whatever the topic is, then it gets assigned to the board. So we already know outdoor ed is coming onto the agenda next month, so we don't put that on there. That was an interest.
We might get some attendance for that.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, so we'll hear community comments about that. I wanted to hear just about like a little presentation on our K-3 literacy efforts. I would like that on that list. A few years ago, we sent some teachers to get training. This was when the state was mandating like that we check for dyslexia at a very early age, and we were trying to find ways for the younger age students, teachers to learn new ways to teach them reading. And they went to, I can't remember the training, but you know, it was really great stuff. And they came here and they brought some of the tools and they gave us a presentation on some, like they gave us a lesson, basically, if you were in kindergarten, what they do. It's great, you know, like you put your finger and stuff, the tactile thing, visual, it was really neat. So I'd be interested in hearing about that, like what we're doing, you know, for early literacy efforts.
I know Marla has been doing
In particular, I'd like to hear about how like phonics and that kind of stuff implemented. That was starting to be reincorporated into teaching.
Yeah, I'd support that as well.
All right.
How many teachers are Wilson trained? You may not know that.
So there's different levels of Wilson. So it just depends upon the various levels. RTI and resource are all Wilson trained. Wilson certified, we have 2 in district currently. Wilson certified is a whole nother level
Right,
above.
I think is she at Washington? Is one of them at Washington?
Possibly, yes. But all of our RTI and all of our resource are currently Wilson certified at a level 1. Well, they're at a level 1, but there's different levels of Wilson. Right, but we'd be happy, something that's, we'd be happy to work on that.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? All right. So is there, number 24, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed to adjourning?